Yeah, it's UPB, OptionMillionaires.com, an hour and a half before the opening bell on this Wednesday, September 2nd, 2015. My goodness, the days are just blasting by in 2015. It was a boring start to the year if you look back at the start of the year. Consolidation, it's been 9 months almost of consolidation. Finally gave birth slightly prematurely to this massive market crash. And we've recovered some of those losses. But now we're pulling back, and if you go back to October, go back to October of last year, it was a nice, beautiful, well-orchestrated V-bottom. A pullback, and then a rally. So this was not as orderly. So we're getting this crash, and we have a bounce, but now that bounce is starting to fail. We are getting a bounce here intraday, but we'll see if these gains can hold throughout the trading session. If you look, yesterday's trading session, we had a blow-off bottom here at the 1900 level for S&P 500 futures, so that'll be short-term support. If you want to look again, longer term, we need to break above a level that we could not break above in the overnight hours. You can look yesterday's session. We started off down 2%, then down a little more at the opening belt, but we spiked up here to this level just below 1940 on S&P 500 futures, which we tried to break above in the overnight hours, could not do it. So just remember that chant Islander fans used to do. 1940, last time the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, before 1994. Need to break above this level to put last week's highs into focus, the recovery highs that we hit on Thursday. Remember that swift decline in recovery. So this would be something to watch. The 1940 level, get us back up to 1980 and 1990. And how about that crude oil? Yeah, we were getting a big bounce on Monday. That was helping to lift stocks off the lows. But yesterday, wow, what a reversal to the downside. We were down some 7-8%, gave up almost all of those gains that we saw on Monday. And then ultimately after the close we did. So we came all the way back to Monday's starting prices. We're getting a little bit of a bounce overnight, but still down over 1%. So let's watch crude oil here. Is it breaking down? The one thing to watch for, if you look compared to the March low, it's a little more dramatic spike to the upside of rejection of these 5+ year lows. I think it's something constructive here that I also think is going to lead to a bounce in energy. We started to get that bounce. Let's bring up energy. I'll come back to JP Morgan Chase in a minute. XLE, which a lot of people were calling for the bottom and when it hit 70 and 69. Not so much. We bottomed out at about 59 here, 58.74 for XLE. And I think we're starting to get close to at least a short-term bottom, a blow-off bottom here. And we're going to make a move back up to 70. And I think crude oil, something to watch. If it starts to bounce, I think XLE is going to be a nice long position up to 70 to end a week. JP Morgan Chase as well. Pulled back yesterday. The prior day, banks were doing pretty good. Goldman Sachs was up. JP Morgan Chase was up. And you can see the gap down. We had to start the trading session yesterday. I think those losses are going to be recovered in the next couple trading sessions, assuming, and I'm going to watch this level here, IWM 112. Look at this 112 level. The breakdown late in the trading session, the snapback over it, the 112 level is something to watch. If that level holds, I think we're setting up for a move for IWM, possibly back up to that 120 level. We got to give it a good kiss goodbye if this is indeed the end of this 6+ year bull market. We got to come up and give that 120 kiss goodbye because it's been so good to us throughout 2015, acting as support. It would just, it just wouldn't be right if we didn't give it a nice little before markets continued to go to the downside. And if you look IWM, next support level would be down here at about the 103 level. Pull a trend line across. You can see what I'm talking about. That was the October Ebola low. You're going to hear a lot about that, especially if stock prices continue to fall. We're going to get that as the support for a bounce. Of course, we break through it. That's going to set us up down into the mid-70s. Could you imagine that? That'd be a sight to behold. But again, as I talked about this in my updates, you want to trade for downside. It's going to be plenty of time to do it. We're not going to do a 30% candle to the downside. It's just going to be the trend is going to change. And again, with the S&P 500, it was talking the same thing. We have this wonderful trend since the lows of March 2009. If the trend is indeed changing, you're going to get that XLE type move. Look, the trend started to change. We have some bounces along the way, but if you're trading for downside, you're doing good. No sense jumping the gun. And I talked about this as well. I've been trading very small because I am still not sure where this market is headed with 100% certainty. So why put a lot of capital at risk when you can just wait for the market to tell you where it's going? And it's still Not certain, definitive, not 100% guaranteed where this market's going. So keep it light. That way you put your capital away from the risk in this marketplace right now. There's a lot of risk out there. Also look at the VXX finally moving to the upside after all of these years, tracking the volatility index. All right, so let's go back to JP Morgan Chase. You can see came up against long-term trend line resistance, briefly broke above it, and support lies at 56. So we're smack dab in the middle if you want to look at the indicators, starting to get toward that oversold level. So I don't know if there's much more downside in the tank. And I do think here over the short term, if we get a bounce for the market, the gap down that we saw yesterday will get filled possibly as soon as today, as crazy as that sounds. Another stock to look at negatively would be Microsoft. Look at Microsoft bumping up against long-term trend line resistance. And if you look from a 5-year chart perspective, it's been trying to break back over this trend line here, which acted as support since the middle of 2013. Actually, you could bring it all the way back to the start of 2013. Tried to break back over, could not. This morning it's up a couple percent. Let's see if it breaks back over this. We could be setting up for record highs, but I don't know, it looks kind of bearish to me as LinkedIn does as well. You look at LinkedIn, similar kind of chart where it's trying to break back over long-term support. Has not been able to do it. It's got a lot of resistance here at the 190, 200 level. So we'll see if it gets back up to 190. You got to watch it for a kiss. And then more downside, bring us down to possibly 140. Wow, that would be a sight to behold. Bob, analyst, came out talking positively about the stock this morning. Hit a new record low last week. And you can see, is this something constructive or just continuation of this bleeding lower? I talked about the market yesterday. It's almost like you put all the shares in a bucket, and that bucket's got a big hole in it, and all the shares are just dripping out. Slow and steady sell-off here for BABA. If you also look at FCX, which has been slowly trending lower since hitting, 37.50 in the middle of 2014. You can go back even further. It was 52.50, but this is after a forward split, I believe 2 for 1. You can see the move it's had recently, the volume pickup. Carl Icahn's taken a stake. This could be some sort of a bottom here short term. I keep talking about this, though. I do think it's going to pull back to about, I don't know, $1, $2 over the long term, breaking down. You could also use the 2008, 2009 lows as a possible support level here. You draw a trend line across, so we might get a curl up, 1250, 15, maybe 1750, before it ultimately withers away and dies. One last chart, GoPro. I bought calls in the name, probably one of the worst trades I've made in the last couple months. If you look just a couple days ago, it was at the 49 level, pulled back, and I got some calls because I thought it was going to bounce. I thought it was setting up for a big move, and instead it's been nothing but carnage. Downgraded this morning under the 41 level early on. So, yeah, I've been pretty good the last couple months at finding stocks that are ready to make a big move, both to the upside and the downside, but sometimes just on the wrong side of the trade. Of course, in hindsight, could have bought calls and puts. This is a great thing about trading stock options. You don't have to be right about where the stock heads. You just got to be right about the size of the move. It's the size of the move that matters in stock options. All right, UPBOptionMillionaires.com. I'll see you in the chat room. It's going to be certainly another interesting trading session. Let's take one last look at S&P 500 futures, up just over 0.6%, gyrating around. You can see the consolidation here. So what we're going to watch for is another bounce at the open. Can it break above this level? That's something to watch. 1940. Remember that. UPB, I'll see you in the chat room. Everyone have a great trading day. Goodbye.